So you want to understand the Missouri Compromise, but you've only got about 10 minutes until life pulls you away. Alright then, let's get started. In 1820, the United States nearly tore itself apart over an imaginary line. Missouri wanted to join the Union as a slave state, and suddenly Congress was split north versus south. Angry speeches filled the Capitol. Threats of disunion whispered in the halls, and the nation faced a terrifying question. Could slavery destroy the nation before it had even finished growing? The solution was a compromise, one that may have brought peace for the time being, but wouldn't stop the fire. It only delayed the explosion. This is the story of the Missouri Compromise. By 1819, the United States was a young nation, already carrying an old, unresolved wound. There were 11 free states and 11 slave states, and that numerical balance mattered deeply because it preserved an uneasy peace in the Congress. Every new state now carried consequences far beyond borders. It carried the future. Lawmakers understood that admitting even one state on unequal terms could tilt political power for eternity. Slavery was no longer just a regional institution. It had become a national chess piece. The balance held, but only barely, and everyone knew that it wouldn't last forever. In February 1819, the Missouri Territory applied for admission to the Union as a slave state, setting off alarms in Washington. On the surface, it seemed like a routine request from a growing Western territory, but Missouri's admission would give slave states a majority in the Senate for the first time. What had once been a background tension now moved front and center in national politics. Newspapers, politicians, and ordinary citizens began paying attention. A technical process had suddenly become a national crisis. As Missouri's application moved through the Congress, Northern lawmakers began pushing back. Some were motivated by moral opposition to slavery, but many were driven by political fear. They worried that slaveholding interests would dominate the federal government if the balance tipped. This opposition hardened quickly and publicly, surprising Southern representatives who believed Missouri's admission was a done deal. The debate grew sharper with each passing week. What had once been whispered disagreements were now shouted on the House floor. On February 13, 1819, Representative James Tallmadge of New York proposed a dramatic solution. His amendment would prohibit the introduction of new enslaved people in Missouri and gradually free those already there. The proposal stunned Congress and infuriated the South. Northerners increasingly viewed it as a reasonable limit on slavery's expansion. The amendment transformed a political dispute into a moral confrontation. In March of 1819, the House of Representatives passed the Tallmadge Amendment, largely along sectional lines. Northern votes carried the measure forward, while Southern representatives voted overwhelmingly against it. The vote made one thing unmistakably clear. Party loyalty mattered less than regional identity. For the first time, many Americans saw Congress split clearly into North versus South. The passage shocked Southerners and energized Northern anti-slavery voices. The nation had crossed a psychological line that it never should have. When the Tallmadge Amendment reached the Senate, it met fierce resistance. Southern senators, protected by equal state representation, blocked the measure. The Senate's rejection created a legislative stalemate that dragged on for months. No compromise seemed possible, and talk of disunion quietly entered political conversation. Americans began to fear that slavery could tear the nation apart far sooner than expected. The crisis exposed just how fragile the Union was. As the debate dragged into late 1819, something deeper became obvious. Lawmakers were no longer voting as Federalists or Democratic Republicans. They were voting as Northerners or Southerners. This shift terrified political leaders who had believed parties could contain regional differences. The Missouri debate revealed how slavery had the political power to override traditional political alliances. The old system of compromise politics was beginning to crack. The Union was still intact, but its foundations were weakening, and that was obvious. In December of 1819, Maine applied for admission to the Union as a free state. At first, this seemed unrelated to the Missouri crisis, but it soon became the key to resolving it. Maine's application offered Congress a way to restore balance without settling the deeper issue of slavery. The idea of pairing states began to circulate quietly through the capital. What looked like coincidence soon became strategy. For the first time in months, compromise seemed possible. During the winter of 1820, Henry Clay stepped into the center of the storm. Known for his political skill and calm temperament, Clay worked tirelessly to bridge the sectional divide. He proposed admitting Missouri and Maine together, preserving the Senate balance. At the same time, he suggested drawing a geographic line to govern slavery's future expansion. Neither side was fully satisfied, which was precisely why the deal worked. Clay's efforts pulled the nation back from the edge. Missouri would enter the Union as a slave state, while Maine would enter as a free state. The agreement restored numerical balance in the Senate and temporarily calmed public anxiety. Many Americans celebrated the compromise as proof that the political system still worked. Yet beneath the relief was quiet unease. Everyone sensed that the solution was temporary. Alongside the state's admissions, Congress established a geographic boundary at the latitude 3630 across the Louisiana Territory. Slavery would be prohibited north of the line and permitted south of it, except in Missouri. The line attempted to impose order on westward expansion. Maps now carried moral meaning, dividing freedom from bondage with a ruler's edge. The simplicity of the solution made it attractive, but it also revealed how artificial peace truly was. President James Monroe signed the compromise into law on March 6, 1820. Though personally uneasy about the precedent it set, he believed it was necessary to preserve the Union. The signing marked a moment of national relief. On March 15, 1820, Maine was officially admitted to the Union as the 23rd state and a free one. Formerly part of Massachusetts, Maine's admission symbolized Northern victory without confrontation. Its entry restored balance and validated the compromise strategy. For many Northerners, Maine represented progress and containment. For Southerners, it was a concession made tolerable by Missouri's admission. The Union moved forward, but cautiously. Missouri's admission was delayed by controversy over its state constitution, which barred free black people from entering the state. After tense negotiations, Missouri was finally admitted on August 10, 1821. The delay revealed how unresolved racial and sectional tensions remained. Even compromise required compromise. Missouri entered the Union, but not without leaving scars. In 1820, Thomas Jefferson wrote privately that the Missouri debate was like a fire bell in the night. Though long retired from politics, Jefferson understood the moment's gravity. He feared the sectional conflict would never truly fade. His words captured the anxiety many Americans felt, but could not yet articulate. The compromise had quieted the alarm, but the fire still burned. Jefferson's warning would echo through decades. Ultimately, the North received a key limitation on the expansion of slavery. Slavery was banned in most of the Louisiana Territory, north of 3630 latitude line, which reassured Northerners that free labor would dominate much of the nation's future. The admission of Maine as a free state preserved balance in the Senate and prevented immediate Southern political dominance. The South gained the admission of Missouri as a slave state, protecting slaveholding interest. It also secured the principle that slavery could expand westward so long as it was below the 3630 line, setting an important precedent. At the same time, the South accepted a geographic limit on slavery's growth, something it had long resisted. By dividing the nation along a clear sectional line, it had hardened identities and made future conflicts more explosive. Instead of resolving slavery, the Missouri Compromise taught Americans to manage the problem politically rather than confront it morally. That lesson would shape every major crisis leading up to the Civil War. History isn't just dates on a page. It's fire, smoke, and decisions that echo centuries later. On this channel, we dive into moments that almost tore the nation apart, the choices that shaped our world, and the stories no one teaches in school. If you want to follow the sparks that ignited revolutions, compromises, and conflicts that still matter today, hit subscribe and join me next week to discuss the nullification crisis, another major event in the timeline towards Civil War. Don't just watch history unfold, feel it.